All right, so today we're going deep on ancient civilizations and like sound energy and maybe tech they had that we're just barely starting to understand now.
Oh, yeah.
We've got some Michael Tellinger to unpack,
Okay.
and then a couple deep dives, some of the Lost History Channel, TKTC,
Right.
about Teotihuacan.
Interesting.
One of them even says it might have been an ancient power plant.
Really?
Pretty wild stuff. So you ready to get your mind bent a little?
Yeah, always up for that. It's a fascinating topic. I mean, just think about it challenging all those traditional history ideas.
Oh, right.
What if ancient cultures were way more advanced than we give them credit for?
Yeah.
What would that mean for us today if they knew how to use sound and energy in ways we haven't even figured out yet?
Exactly.
Oh.
Okay, so let's start with Tellinger's idea about sound.
Okay.
He's basically saying that it's more than what we hear, like way more.
Right.
He thinks the whole universe vibrates at a certain frequency, and if we mess with that, it could be like really bad.
Uh-huh.
He uses examples like, how sound can shatter glass. But then he goes even further with stuff like levitation and boiling water with sound waves.
Interesting.
He even says that 7 hertz frequencies can create DNA.
Hmm.
I'm not really sure about the science on that one, to be honest.
Yeah, that one's a bit out there. Even Tellinger admits there's a lot more research to be done there.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is that the 7 hertz claim comes from a researcher named Luc Montaigne.
Okay.
And it kind of ties into this idea that sound might actually be like a precursor to electromagnetism. Something that Nikola Tesla was really into.
Right, Tesla.
Remember that quote where he says, "The earth rings like a bell"?
Oh, yeah?
And if we can tap into that frequency, we could have unlimited energy.
Yeah, that's a powerful idea.
It is. And Tellinger brings up this guy named Peter Davy, who's supposedly been boiling water with sound since the 1940s.
No way, seriously?
Yeah, it's like straight out of Tesla's playbook, Free Energy.
Wow. So, but back to the ancient civilizations. How does Tellinger think they used all this sound stuff?
Well, he thinks they use it to actually build those incredible structures we see all over the world. Think about Stonehenge, for example. Perfect symmetry.
Right.
And then there are those weird frequencies they've detected coming from inside the pyramids.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Tellinger thinks it's not just coincidence.
So he thinks it's like evidence of them using sound to manipulate things.
Exactly.
I don't know. I have to push back a little on that one.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like a pretty big jump to make.
It is a bold theory.
Yeah.
But there are some interesting pieces of the puzzle out there.
Okay, like what?
Well, think about Edward Leedskalnin and Coral Castle.
Oh, yeah, that's a mystery for sure.
Right. He moved all those massive coral blocks, supposedly, with simple tools and some cone-shaped devices.
Right, and no one's ever been able to explain how he did it.
Exactly. It's a total mystery.
It is.
Tellinger calls it the ice cream cone phenomenon.
Yeah, and he's found similar cone-shaped tools near those ancient sites in South Africa, right?
Yeah, and they've been found all over the place. Egypt's Sumer, there are even cuneiform inscriptions that mention them being used for building temples.
Wow.
And even near those Bosnian pyramids, too.
So they're everywhere.
They are, which
Wait.
makes you wonder if there's some kind of shared knowledge that's been lost over time.
Yeah, it does make you think.
And it's not just about the tools in themselves, but also where they've been found.
Right.
Tellinger challenges the idea that southern Africa was sparsely populated in ancient times. He's discovered this massive network of circular stone structures. He calls them cattle crawls.
Cattle crawls.
Yeah, and they're all connected by channels. And get this, they're aligned with solstices and equinoxes, even sacred geometry.
Hold on, these things were aligned with the stars, too.
Yeah, it seems like there was something more complex going on than just housing animals.
That's a whole other level of sophistication.
Right, and here's the key. These structures don't have any doors or entrances.
So they weren't dwellings.
Nope, and get this, they're made from hornfels and dolerite. These are stones that Tellinger says ring like bells and conduct sound incredibly well.
Interesting.
Plus, they're high in silica.
Silica like what we use in our tech today.
The same stuff we use in quartz crystals.
Wait, so are you saying they were building with the ancient equivalent of microchips?
It's a pretty wild thought, right?
Yeah, what were they using these structures for?
Well, that's the big question.
Yes.
Were they tapping into some kind of sonic energy grid we don't even know about?
It's a whole different way of looking at history.
It is.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a second and talk about Teotihuacan.
Okay.
Now, this place is shrouded in mystery.
Yeah.
No evidence of rulers, no clear understanding of how it rose or fell.
Right.
Just a massive abandoned city that once housed like 500,000 people.
It's incredible.
It is. So how does this connect to all the sound energy stuff?
Well, there's some interesting parallels.
Okay, like what?
Like the Giza pyramids, Teotihuacan's layout mirrors the Orion's Belt constellation. And the Pyramid of the Sun there is exactly half the height of the Great Pyramid.
Wow.
And they both use similar building techniques, too.
Okay, but how does that tie into Tellinger's theories?
Well, I'm not saying the pyramids were built with sound necessarily,
Yeah.
but there's another mystery at Teotihuacan that might be relevant.
What's that?
They found mica embedded throughout the structures.
On mica.
Yeah, and it's not local. It came from over 3,000 miles away in Brazil.
Wow. They went through all that trouble just to decorate.
That's what's so strange. Why go through all that effort?
Right, so what's the big deal about mica?
Well, it's got some pretty remarkable properties.
Like what?
Mica is like an amazing electrical insulator, and it's heat resistant, incredibly stable. Actually, it's used in all kinds of electronics today.
Oh, wow.
So finding it in Teotihuacan makes you think it wasn't just for looks. It probably had a real purpose.
Yeah, that makes sense. So are we thinking they had like an ancient electrical system or something in Teotihuacan? I mean, how would that even work?
Well, one theory is that Teotihuacan was like a giant circuit board.
What?
Yeah, the pyramids would be like processors, and then the underground channels, some of which are lined with mica, would act as conductors. It's a pretty out there idea. I know, but the evidence is pretty interesting.
A giant circuit board. It's crazy. But they'd need some kind of power source, right? Where would they get the energy from?
Well, that's the big question. Isn't it the micas placed high up in the Pyramid of the Sun, which makes some people think they might have been trying to harvest energy from above? And then there's that tunnel under the Pyramid of the Sun that's filled with mercury.
Wait, mercury, what does that have to do with anything? Isn't mercury toxic?
Yeah, it is, but it also has some unique electrical properties.
Really?
Mercury can be electrically charged, and it's a fantastic conductor. And remember, the mica they found at Teotihuacan has those specific elements in it: iron, magnesium, lithium, manganese, titanium.
Right.
And it all came from one very specific location in Brazil, over 4,600 miles away.
Yeah.
It seems too deliberate to be a coincidence.
Okay, now that is giving me chills. It's like they were building this massive energy machine that we can't even understand.
And think about what the Aztecs called Teotihuacan, the place where the gods were created.
Right.
Maybe they were just looking at the remains of technology that was so advanced it seemed like magic to them.
Yeah, I can see that. So we've got these ancient structures, maybe built with sound, maybe even harnessing some kind of unknown energy.
Yeah.
But how does any of this connect to us today? Is this just some cool ancient history, or is there something more to it?
I think there's a lot we can learn from these ancient cultures, especially when it comes to technology.
Okay, how so?
Think about cymatics for a minute.
Cymatics, the study of sound vibrations.
Right. Tellinger says that a lot of the ancient stone circles actually resemble cymatic patterns.
Yeah, he thinks each stone circle is like an energetic point, drawing energy from the earth using sound.
Exactly. It's like they were tapping into the planet's natural energy field, something we're just starting to explore with things like geothermal energy.
Right, right. And what about that magnetron thing he talks about?
Oh yeah, the magnetron. It's a device that we use to generate microwaves. Tellinger thinks that ancient structures might have used giant magnetrons to harness sound energy on a massive scale.
Seriously?
Yeah.
That's incredible. Imagine if we could unlock that kind of technology today.
It would completely change how we think about energy.
Yeah, totally. But if these ancient civilizations were so advanced, what happened to them? Why don't we see this kind of technology anymore?
That's the question that's been bugging historians and archaeologists forever.
Yeah.
Tellinger thinks they understood something that we've forgotten: the power of silica in its natural form.
Okay.
We spend so much time and energy trying to extract silica from raw materials to use in our tech.
Right.
But maybe there's a reason why crystals are becoming so popular these days. Maybe we're subconsciously reconnecting with this ancient knowledge.
So you're saying there's more to crystals than just looking pretty?
I think so. It's all about that connection to the Earth's energy.
I'm starting to see why this is so mind-blowing.
And here's another thing. Tellinger says these ancient sites weren't isolated. He thinks they were all interconnected, forming this huge network of energy grids that spanned entire continents.
It's like they were thinking globally and understanding how everything's connected way before we did.
Exactly. And maybe that's the key to understanding their technology, realizing that everything is connected. We see that in the layout of Teotihuacan, too.
Yeah.
The precise alignment with the stars, the network of tunnels underground.
And what about the mercury, do you think they were using it, and the tunnels to create some kind of energy circuit connecting the whole city?
It's definitely possible if you think about the Aztecs' belief that Teotihuacan was the birthplace of the gods. Maybe they were just seeing the remains of a civilization that was so advanced it seemed supernatural.
I'm starting to understand why this is more than just a history lesson.
Right.
It's like we're being challenged to rethink what we know about the past
Mm.
and maybe even about ourselves.
Exactly. What if these ancient cultures weren't as primitive as we've always assumed? What if we've lost touch with technology and knowledge that could solve some of the biggest problems we face today?
It's pretty humbling when you think about it. Like, we might be rediscovering things instead of inventing them.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, like, what else are we missing? What other clues are out there just waiting to be discovered?
Right.
Maybe all this fancy modern tech we have is actually holding us back from truly understanding how these ancient systems worked.
It's like we're trying to solve an ancient puzzle, but using the wrong instructions. Maybe the answers are right in front of us. We just need to go back to the basics.
Back to the basics of sound and energy.
Exactly. Understanding them in a way that we haven't even thought of yet.
Okay, so where do we even go from here? How do we even start to unravel all these mysteries? It feels kind of massive and honestly a bit overwhelming.
Well, I think the first step is admitting that there's more to the story than what we've been told.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to question the official narrative.
Right.
Explore those alternative ideas.
There are some brilliant researchers out there pushing the boundaries of what we thought we knew about history.
You mentioned cymatics earlier. Are there any resources you recommend for people who want to learn more about that maybe even try it out themselves?
Oh, definitely.
Okay.
There's a great book by John Reed called Cymatics, a study of wave phenomena and vibration.
Okay.
It's a really good introduction to the field, and it's got some amazing visuals, too.
Cool.
And if you want to get hands-on, you can find kits online that let you create your own cymatic patterns using sound and sand.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I'm going to have to check that out. What about Tellinger's work specifically? Are there good places for people to go if they want to learn more about his theories on ancient sound technology?
Yeah, he's written a bunch of books on the topic.
Okay.
Slave Species of the Gods and Temples of the African Gods go really deep into his research in southern Africa.
Okay.
He's also got a website and a YouTube channel where he posts his latest findings and ideas.
Right. I've noticed that some of his stuff can be a little controversial. How should people approach his work, with a critical eye, but without just dismissing it completely?
That's a good point. I think it's important to approach anything you read or watch with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right.
Especially when it comes to alternative history.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to question the sources, look for evidence, and come to your own conclusions.
Good advice.
And remember, there's a difference between being open-minded and being gullible.
Right. So are we supposed to just sit back and admire these ancient wonders? Or can we actually use this knowledge in our lives today? Can we build our own sonic pyramids to power our houses?
Well, I think the biggest lesson we can learn from these ancient cultures is the importance of harmony and balance.
Oh, okay.
They seem to understand that everything is connected from the tiniest particle to the biggest star, and they built this understanding into their technology, their architecture, their whole way of life.
So we need to figure out how to combine technology and nature instead of seeing them as separate things.
It's exactly work with nature, not against it. Harness its power in a sustainable and respectful way.
Right.
Maybe by studying these ancient sites and all their strange features, we can rediscover this lost knowledge and create a whole new era of energy and technology.
It's a pretty beautiful idea, a world where technology helps us without hurting the planet, where we can get energy from the earth without using it all up.
It might sound like science fiction, but maybe the key to that future is hidden in our past.
That's a good point. So to all our listeners out there, keep exploring, keep questioning, keep an open mind.
Yeah.
What if the solutions to the world's problems aren't in some fancy lab, but in the ruins of a forgotten civilization?
The past is full of secrets, and maybe by uncovering them, we can create a future that's both technologically advanced and in tune with the natural world.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. It's been a mind-bending journey.
It has. Thanks for having me.